It's so good to have you back. Today's conversation is deeply personal, and it hits a type of grief many of us carry but rarely name: the weight of never feeling like you quite fit in.
Hello, friends. I'm Cassandra Harris-Towner.
And I'm Daiana Bernard.
As licensed mental health counselors, we're unpacking the quiet, complex griefs that don't come with a funeral, because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge.
Welcome to the Living Loss Podcast. We're so glad you're joining our conversation as we name these losses and create a meaningful path forward together. Please subscribe and share this episode. It helps us grow this community and reach others who need to know that their grief is valid. Let's dive in. Today, we're talking with Eliana about the unique grief of the middle ground, how we build an identity when we feel we aren't quite from here or from there. If you've ever felt like this permanent outsider, this conversation is for you. This is The Living Loss.
Welcome, Eliana. I say I because I'm selfish, but we are super excited to have you here. And I know that we've chatted just a little bit in the past about the different experiences that you've had, but I'm really, really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about your experience and where you started and how you got there and this feeling that you have of almost being a permanent outsider.
She's going to be speaking about navigating the in-between New York, DR, aka Dominican Republic, and North Carolina. So she's here to talk about invisible grief.
Okay, so I was gonna start with it all begins.
You can. It all
Yeah.
began.
So yeah, it's like Disney child in me. I think it all begins. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and then I think when I was 4, my parents decided that they wanted to move to Dominican Republic. I still remember moving and how big of a shift it was. Because at home we used to listen to our parents like speak Spanish and we understood it. Like we were able to understand everything they were saying. Could we like reply in Spanish and like carry a conversation in Spanish? No, not really. So moving there and being 4, I knew a language already, but I had to like learn Spanish. And because of the way I look and my parents being Dominican, and for some reason people still to this age mention that I traveled there when I was a baby. I don't remember that I was a baby. But for some reason, it was the association that I should have known Spanish because my parents are Dominican and I traveled there before. I didn't. I remember learning Spanish and just being quiet for a long time, trying to like get into the rhythm of saying Spanish, speaking Spanish the right way. I think when I was in high school was when I realized that I didn't really fit in, even though I had lived there for a really long time at that point, because we still spoke English at home. I still read in English. I was very much connected to TV in English. Like I still watched Disney Channel, the movies, and everything that had to do with the USA. So to me, even though I was there and I grew up there and I should have been considered Dominican, I still felt like an outsider because I had additional skills because English brings additional skills with the language. So I always stood out because of that. And I think in college I realized that I didn't want to live in DR. I wanted to move back here. I knew it was going to be hard, but I think I made the decision at least 2 years before getting out of college. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing it. I have 2 years to convince my parents that I'm leaving as soon as I graduate college. And I did. I graduated college on the 14th. And by the 20th of June, I was in the States.
Wow.
So under a week, I decided to move by
That's
myself
really
to the States.
interesting. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
really interesting that your fundamental years were here in the United States. It was in Brooklyn, and that was a pull for you, right? That seems like it was your foundation and where, even though you were 4, those were where your roots were planted.
hmm
And when you're 4 years old, you're a sponge and you're picking up so many things, but you felt
Yes.
that discomfort of moving.
Mhm.
So I know Eliana her whole life, and I remember her leaving, and that was rough. Do you remember what year that was by any chance?
1996, the summer of 1996.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So in 1990, I moved from Brooklyn to Staten Island, and it didn't feel that long. So what 6 years later, that's when you left, right?
Yeah, we know.
So that makes sense now because you were still your family and my family still being in Brooklyn was my escape from Staten Island, which I did not like living there at all. So then that was a transition. And then when you left, that was like 2 years in to living there, which still felt new. And then you left. So these moves when we're so young, it really takes us away from what we know, from the community we know, the people we know, our family. So it's interesting. We both had our own culture shocks.
And I feel like a lot of people, because we were little, a lot of people still said, like, you should have been fine. Like, you were little. And I'm like, change affects us all. It doesn't matter if you're a baby, it doesn't matter what age you're in. Change will like affect you in a certain way. And I still remember the airport when we went down there. My mom was really upset over the whole, move in the beginning because she had also like built a life here. Like, my mom had left Dominican Republic when she was really, really young. So to her, it was, she kind of lived through her own grief of I built the whole life here and now I have to go and learn to live over there again. And still to this day, she says that if we ever want her living here, we just have to let her know and she'll move back. She doesn't like the cold, but she'll deal with everything else.
Mm.
But yeah, but I think, yeah, that was a big, and we still like I think what kept the connection alive also was we still traveled. We came here, we came to Puerto Rico a lot. So I still had that like the connection was still alive, but also, we left family here. Like I left my cousins, I left Diana, like we left a lot of people that were part of our inner circle here. So it always felt like we had all this family that was really far from us
I
at that
appreciate
time.
that you mentioned how that people were telling you
Hmm.
you should have been fine because you were 4.
Hmm.
And if you ever hear someone say you should have been fine or it's been many years, that's highlights that it's grief. And it's the
Hmm.
kind of grief that we speak about, right? The living loss. You're living with that loss and it's ambiguous loss. And you're not receiving the support. If anything, it's being invalidated. Not on purpose, but because people don't understand this type of loss.
Yes. And it's interesting because I talk to friends. My sister-in-law is also like she lives abroad and she hadn't realized how much she missed Dominican Republic until she made it down there. And she was like, I miss being around these people. I miss being around people that speak my own language. Like I was telling her, I'm like, a few years back, I realized that for some reason my nervous system is never okay in any country, but in DR, it calms down way more than it is here in the States. But that's at the beginning. 3, 4 days after, I want to come back home. I miss my house. I miss my environment. And it's like, okay, which one is it? Do you want to be over there? Do you want to be here?
Ooh.
And that's the whole, well, I also feel guilty about it because my parents, whenever I say I want to go home, they're like, but this is your home. I'm like, no, this is your home. My home is in the States. But I do, whenever I come back, I once again miss, being around them and everything that, Dominican Republic has to offer. So,
Mhm. Your experience is so unique, and I'm sure many people don't hear of being born here and then going back to the motherland and then coming
mhm,
back here. But those experiences that the way you explained and described how it felt,
mhm,
Cassandra shared only a few episodes ago about her experience going back home to upstate New York and feeling she almost verbatim said the same thing. I didn't realize how much I missed them. Do you want to share anything
mhm.
about those feelings that maybe you related to?
Well, I was sitting here listening and I was thinking not only of like a similarity between the experiences and the feelings that I had going home, but there's also this old saying that I'm familiar with. is when you have like this anxiety, when you have this response, it's either hysterical or it's historical. So, like, you have the anxiety of going home. So, either there's something going on upstairs and you're not 100% certain, or your nervous system feels at peace and it recognizes where you're at. We were also talking about how, like, your body remembers. So, when I went home, my body remembered like the grief of leaving, and but also the peace upon returning back to what is now my home, because after a while, what I think of or refer to as home is not home anymore. So that was a really big understanding and undertaking for me to realize that I talk about going home. Yeah, I talk about going here. Yeah, I talk about going there, but it's not necessarily the reality any longer. And so the peace that I feel when I return to what is actually currently my home is astounding, as opposed to what my body remembers and coming from previous times, if that makes sense. Um, Even just reacting to the different people around me. Like, I remember feeling anxious and intimidated and all these different things by different people that I encountered, and I didn't have that any longer because I was approaching it from an adult's perspective as opposed to a child's perspective. So, I'm just curious as to making the shift from college back to the United States. What was that like for you? Because you were coming home, but you weren't coming home.
It was really scary. I promise I was not gonna get emotional on this. Well, to
We
myself.
failed
I
at
didn't
that
promise this to
already.
anyone. um, I was young and excited, and I now in my 30s, I realized that we did a lot of things in our 20s. And now I'm like, what was I thinking? But like I didn't let fear get the best of me. Like I spoke to one of my really close friends. I'm like Diana, I have a very like small inner circle. And most of these ladies, I've known them my whole life. And she was living in PA at the moment. And I like in passing mentions, hey, I'm thinking of moving back to the States. What are your thoughts? And the first thing out of her mouth was, I have a spare room in my house. And it was like, okay. And that I think, aside from me like being really sure that I wanted to do this, was like, and I knew that she wouldn't have offered it if it wasn't like there. So she became pregnant, I think like 2 months after that. And it worked out because I moved. And then in the beginning, I was helping her with like the whole pregnancy and everything. I owe her so much because she was one of those people that she's like, okay, you moved back. This is how things work nowadays. Like when you left in the 90s, it was one way. This is how things are now. And she like helped me open my first bank account. Like she, took me to job interviews. Like she did so much for me in those like beginning months to just make me feel like I was, in a home away from home. But also she gave me so much advice, encouragement, and I think that that played a very big part in me fighting to stay here because people think that, even though I was born here and I knew part of the language already, like it wasn't a new thing to me, it's still super scary to move to another country, and you're leaving behind everything and I, brought a degree with me, but I still had to start from the beginning. Like I started from the ground up. My first job was working at I call it the Sears of PA because it's like one of those stores, but it was family owned. And, I had an amazing boss that was super understanding, but it was really hard. I moved in the summer, and then PA is very cold in the winter. We don't get winters in the you get summer all year long. So I had to
Mhm.
go out in the snow to work. It was also a very like she lived in PA. There wasn't a lot of transportation available, which is something I had to learn, like how to take transportation. They had a cutoff time that I'm baffled by because they
Mhm.
will stop running at 5, some buses at 5, some buses at 7. So it was one of the most terrifying things I had to do. And it took a really long time for me to accept that it was the right decision. and not like think I want to go back to my parents or I want to go back to what I know. And I feel like the people that I had around me helped a lot, but it took years to kind of adapt
Mhm.
to what my new normal looked like, what my new life looked like, working, spending 10 hours out of home just to go to work and come back. And then I think after a year in PA, I moved back to New York for, family reasons and went back and lived very close to Diana at that point. And I think that made it better because I was around people that I was around in my childhood that I knew my whole life again. And I think that helped a lot. I felt like I had a village behind me. And kudos to the people that move on their own and don't have anyone
Mhm.
because I'm like, I don't know how they did it. And I do not know how they survived this because it's just, I wouldn't say depressing, but it's a terrible place to be in when you don't have anyone if you get sick or just in general if you need to vent or just share what's like your burdens. It's the hardest thing, and people say, oh, with phones and all that, it's never the same. It's never the same going to a friend and talking to them. So I will say I started feeling better about moving and the decision I made around 3 years after I moved, 3 to 4 years after I moved back here. So
Yeah. That
it took
makes a
time.
lot of sense. It was like this rite of passage, this becoming of yourself.
Mhm.
And you were doing it on your own, meaning that you made that decision. Your parents were not coming with you. You were leaving
Mhm.
the motherland and coming here. And you did find a lot of support, and that made all of the difference, having that
Mhm.
support. But internally, you're going through this really ambiguous time, this very confusing time, where I can imagine that you are leaving behind things and picking up things, or parts of your identity, your beliefs, your values, who am I? And that was all so difficult that made you doubt, am I making the right decision? Because it was painful, right? And sometimes the right decisions are not, the sweetest paths, right? And I'm really curious to know, how did you make sense of, even now, you could bring it up to now, like what are things like for you now in the terms of your identity? How did you make sense of the part of you from Dominican Republic and the part of you from the United States?
I think the first realization I had was, can I change this? Do I want to change this?
Mm,
Am I willing to change this? I was like, no. I love my Dominican side. I love the parts of the American side that I've embraced too. And I feel like as I come into my own person, because believe me, until you reach like 28, 29, you are not really there.
no,
Um,
you're not.
Speaking from experience here.
We
And
think we
it's like,
are. We think
yeah,
we are.
we know the whole world and a little bit more. But no, I feel like after you reach a certain age where like everything is developed and you're like done developing basically, you like go, okay, why would I change myself for other people?
Mm-hmm.
Why should I, my own person, my own little world, which I call myself, change for someone else? Like, if you love someone, I feel like you shouldn't ask them to change. You have to adapt to the things that you don't love about that person and then move on. And it's something that it took me a really long time to like make peace with because I remember not wanting to get excited because when you get excited, you get loud. And then that was associated with rowdy Dominicans.
Mm-hmm.
And like someone made a comment about my curly hair or the hoops that I used to wear. And those were things that I carried with me for a really long time where I wouldn't wear the hoops. I, straighten my hair just
Mm-hmm.
to like fit in. But I'm sorry, this melanin won't go away. Like this is what I'm working with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why am I trying to change this? And
Yeah.
honestly, like, most people that meet Dominicans, they love them because we're really warm people. We're happy people. We'll make a party out of anything.
Mhm.
We will find reasons to celebrate. And that's the things that I love about my parents and my country. And
Mhm.
I was like, I shouldn't change that. So I decided to embrace both sides. I have,
Mhm.
the certain things that I love about the US, we were talking about before, like the holidays that I've embraced that in DR are not celebrated, but I
Mhm.
love them and they've become part of my day to day in my life. And it feels weird not to celebrate them. It feels like I'm
Mhm.
missing a part when I don't,
Mhm.
do it. So I feel like a lot of it has been I've been embracing, every part of
Mhm.
myself and everything that makes me unique. And one of those things is my identity. And
Yeah.
whoever's not okay with it, there's the door. There's nothing you can do about it.
There's also
Yeah.
the side of the identity that we can touch on briefly is you were born in the North, you moved to DR, you came back to the North, and then you moved to the South. So that adds a whole additional layer
Layer.
to how do I balance this identity of who I am, how I am, and how I present to other people as well. Because there's even a culture shift that goes from moving, all three of us have moved from the New England
Hmm.
area to the southern area of the United States. And there's a
Yes.
really large culture shift that goes along with that. So even in that sense, I'm curious as to how you've been able to make peace with balancing not just our Hispanic side and our American side, but our northern side with our southern side.
That was a big shift. Southerners are very similar to Dominicans in the sense of they're very welcoming. They want to feed you all the time. Their food is amazing. And I moved from a slow pace of life from DR to New York. And I still to this day go back to New York on vacation and go, why is everybody running? Why is everybody rushing? Like, I remember going somewhere and there's this like really long tunnel that you use to connect. And I was running with everybody. And I'm like, I have nowhere to be. Why am I running? Yeah. And I literally stopped in the middle of the tunnel and had this whole conversation with myself. And then I was like, wow, do I miss this? No. North Carolina, it's very calm. They do things at their own pace. You go to work from 8 to 5, you're going home at 5. They believe. Sundays, it's incredible the amount of people that close down their businesses to spend family to have family time. So a lot of their values are very similar to what I experienced in DR. So it was like I went up in anxiety and stress in New York, and then I went down to Carolina, and it was like, oh, this is lovely. I don't hear anything outside, which is great, except for birds, I think. And I have great work balance. I leave my house 10 minutes before work and I'm there on time and I come home around 5-ish every day. When in New York I had a 2-hour commute, maybe
Mhm.
4 if you count both ways.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So it's a really big shift at the beginning where I was doubting that everybody was really that nice because in New York, I lived in the same house for 7 years. Do not ask me what the name of my neighbors was because I don't know it.
Mhm.
And in Carolina, I might not know all of their names, but I do know all of their faces and what my favorite dish from their house is because
I
they
love
do
that.
bring you stuff home. I thought that was people exaggerating about the South. No, they
Mhm.
will bring you
The
welcome stuff.
hospitality. Mhm.
Yes, the cornbread is to die for.
Oh god, I love
So
cornbread.
keep that in mind. Banana
Mhm.
pudding also definitely
Mhm.
recommend.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah, but it was a big shift.
yeah,
Good one
it
though. But
is.
good. Not big.
It is, but it sounds like North Carolina has been your middle ground where you have been able to identify with both cultures and making yourself well-rounded and doing what's true to you.
Yes,
Mhm. So,
definitely.
as we wrap up today's conversation, we're moving to our favorite part of the show, the Living Lost Lessons. This is where we bridge everything we've talked about with one tangible takeaway you can use right now.
These lessons aren't about fixing the pain, but are about finding a way to carry it. Sometimes it's a tool to practice, and other times it's reflecting on the meaning you've built from a loss you've never asked for. It's the strength that you've gained even in the midst of the hard stuff. So, Eliana, is there something that you've taken away that you'd like to share with us? Something that makes you maybe feel grateful that you identify with both cultures, or something that's true for you?
I think, given that I hit it, like try to hit both of my sides my whole life, because even in DR, I tried to fit in as Dominican, and then here I tried to fit in as American. I think my biggest lesson has been I can't change the past, but I can
Mhm.
embrace my future in the
Mhm.
sense of love bringing the little sides of, my Dominican heritage to
Mhm.
like even my job. Like it's funny because I'll share things with them and they get so excited about it to the point where there's like a few of them that had been going on vacations there just because of the things that I've shared. And they've come back to tell me, like, oh my God, you were not joking. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I know everybody says their country is beautiful and it should be that way. But I'm like, but I love the fact that I get to share that little piece of myself. And even when I go, to Dominican Republic, there's a lot of misconceptions about the US that
Mhm.
I also try to clarify when I'm there as
Mm.
well. So I love the fact that I get to, advocate for both of my cultures in a sense.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
that I also get to tell people the reality of things that at the end of the day, it's going to be scary and it's going to be one of the toughest decisions you made where every day, at least a few minutes of the day, you go, is this the right thing to do? But then, something happens and you're like, it's totally worth it because I am where I want to be right now. I'm happy. I'm in a career that I love and I'm building what I set out to do. So, also, one of my lessons will be for people don't forget what your goal was.
Mm.
Think of that. And I thought I was going to accomplish all of this in 5 years. It took me 10, but I am
Mhm.
so grateful to this 10 years because I
Mhm.
did things the right way. And even though I
The right
didn't
way
agree
for
with myself,
you.
yeah, I I took my time and did things how the best way they could work out for me. So I would say take your time. There is nobody waiting on the other side for you except yourself.
Mm.
So
I
just
love that.
work on that and give yourself grace. Be very patient because you're going to need a lot of that.
Amen to that. Well, Eliana, thank you so much for being here with us today. And
For
if
having me.
Eliana, you're welcome. If Eliana's story resonated with you, please share this episode. It helps us reach people who need to hear that their struggle to belong is valid. Let's keep growing this community together.
And just as a little side note, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. While we are therapists, we are not your therapists, and this does not replace professional mental health care. If you feel like you would like to speak to someone, please reach out to a professional near you. Thanks so much. Thank you,
Adios.
Eliana.
You're
Bye
welcome.
bye.